It is March 18th, 1990, and this is the story of the biggest art heist in US history. It's a cold Tuesday evening in Boston, Massachusetts. Two armed guards are making their rounds through the darkened halls of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which houses a collection of European paintings from the 13th to 19th centuries in addition to sculptures, drawings, and other works of art. Suddenly, one of the guards hears some commotion coming from the other end of the hall. He grabs his partner and they slowly make their way to investigate. As they turn the corner, they see two men dressed in full police uniforms ransacking the nearby armory, grabbing the guns off the walls and loading them into a duffel bag. They also see that the security cameras mounted on the walls have been disabled. The guards immediately draw their own weapons and shout for the intruders to halt, but it's too late. The men have already made their escape, ducking behind a parked van and disappearing into the night. One of the guards radios for backup, and then he and his partner begin to search the museum for damage and to see what, if anything, has been stolen. At first glance, everything appears to be fine, except for the now open and empty display cases. Then one of the guards notices something disturbing. A nearby painting, a small landscape by the Dutch Golden Age master Peter de Hooch, appears to be missing. It's not in its usual place on the wall. In fact, it's nowhere to be found. Upon further inspection, it becomes clear that several other pieces are also gone. The guards quickly contact the police and tell them that there has been a major art heist at the museum. Soon, scores of cops and investigators are swarming all over the building looking for clues. What they find is shocking. In total, 13 artworks have been stolen, including paintings by Vermeer, Rembrandt, Manet, and Degas, all told. The masterpieces taken from the museum that night are worth an estimated $500 million or more. To put this in perspective, the value of the stolen paintings adjusted for inflation would be more than $1 billion, and that doesn't even take into account their immeasurable historical and cultural significance. As news of the daring heist spreads throughout the city and eventually the entire world, everyone is left scratching their heads wondering who could possibly be behind such a brazen crime. The police immediately begin searching for the thieves, but after weeks turn into months and then years, the case goes cold with virtually no new leads. To this day, the paintings have never been recovered and the perpetrators were never brought to justice. So here's what we know. Two men wearing Boston Police Department jackets and carrying guns entered the museum at about 9:45 p.m. on March 18, 1990. They had somehow deactivated the alarm system and disabled the security cameras, allowing them to enter and exit undetected. According to the police report, the men claimed they were responding to reports of a disturbance inside the museum. The two guards on duty, both of whom were licensed to carry firearms, were understandably suspicious and did not let the men in right away. However, one of the officers claimed to have a warrant, at which point the guards stepped aside and allowed them to enter the building. After securing the weapons, the thieves tied up the guards with electrical cords and locked them in the basement, along with two other employees who had been brought in to work that night. They then proceeded to rip 13 artworks right out of their frames and escape on foot. Jumping into a getaway car driven by an accomplice, the getaway vehicle was later found abandoned a few blocks away. But why? Why would anyone want to steal these particular paintings? To answer that question, we must go back to the early morning hours of March. Around 1 a.m., 3 men broke into the museum, presumably to do some damage. One of the men climbed onto the roof while the other two entered through a window and began to scout the interior. The trio ended up meeting back at the front entrance where they discussed their next move. According to the police, the men decided to stay in the building until around 7 a.m. when the alarm system would automatically shut off. They planned to use bolt cutters to open the display cases and remove the paintings without causing much damage so as to make the job look like an inside job. However, their plan went awry when they accidentally triggered the alarm. Thinking fast, the man who had been on the roof retrieved the ladder and fled. The other two stayed behind and waited for the police to arrive. When they heard sirens outside, they knew their luck had run out. So rather than try to finish their heist, they gave up and left the building through an unlocked window. When the police arrived, they found the broken window and the bolt cutters on the floor, but there was no sign of the intruders. There was also no sign of any stolen art, so the cops didn't even realize a robbery had occurred, had it not been for the keen eye of one observant guard who happened to notice a small discrepancy. The thief's game would have gone undiscovered. You see, as part of his rounds, the guard noticed that one of the alarm system's control panels was out of sequence, indicating that someone had tampered with it. He checked the rest of the panels and sure enough, they were all in order. This meant that the alarm was supposed to be on, but the intruder had somehow managed to disable it. So the guard checked the time on the clock above the panel and saw that the alarm was scheduled to deactivate automatically at 7 a.m. Since it was only 5 a.m., he knew the intruder hadn't finished the job yet. So the guard decided to sit tight and wait and see what happened. Not long after 7 a.m., the guard heard some commotion coming from the other end of the hall. That's when he grabbed his partner and investigated, eventually stumbling upon the two men in the armory. The rest, as they say, is history. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist remains the largest property crime in American history. The stolen paintings include Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, considered to be one of his greatest masterpieces, A View of the Garden at Stowe by Dutch painter Jacob van Ruysdael, worth an estimated $200 million, a portrait of Madame X by French artist John Singer Sargent, a bronze sculpture of a head by Italian sculptor Agostino de Ducci, and many others by renowned artists like Vermeer, Degas, Monet, and Manet. The heist has been compared to the Mona Lisa being stolen from the Louvre, and just like the Mona Lisa, the stolen paintings have never been recovered. There have been numerous theories about what happened to the stolen artworks over the years. Some believe that they were smuggled out of the country and sold on the black market. Others believe that they were destroyed or lost forever. There's even a popular theory that posits the paintings are actually still hidden somewhere inside the museum, buried behind the walls or concealed in plain sight. According to this theory, the criminals responsible for the heist never actually intended to sell the paintings. Instead, they simply wanted to hide them away somewhere safe, so that they could retrieve them at some point in the future. Proponents of this theory claim that the thieves were art lovers, who knew the paintings well, and that they hid them in pre-selected locations within the museum itself. Some even believe that the thieves were art collectors who wanted to add the paintings to their own personal collections. In 2017, the FBI offered a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to the recovery of the stolen artworks. However, despite this generous reward, no one has come forward with any credible information about the painting's whereabouts. Even the most audacious art heist in US history remains unsolved to this day. So what really happened to the stolen paintings, and who was behind the audacious heist? Well, unfortunately, we may never know for sure. The mystery of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist will likely continue to baffle and intrigue people for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, a video suggestion below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.